Hello everyone, and thanks for joining me tonight, and I apologise for starting a little bit late. I was running a bit behind this evening, so do apologise, but I am here, I am ready to go. Let's get started. So I am currently just getting Docker spun up. That always takes a bit of time. Even on the new Mac it takes a bit of time, unfortunately. What changes have I done to Docker recently? I think I'm now on PHP 8.1 as I was last time. Everything else should be about the same. So, hey Samuel, thanks for joining again, buddy. How you doing? So, tonight we are going to be refactoring our last CRM stream where we were logging interactions, and we're going to be turning that into event sourcing. So let's go look at the API routes. Here's our interactions here. So what we've got is we've got restore and update. They're both going to be turned into event sourcing. What we didn't do actually is create a delete controller. So we'll just do that while Docker spins up. It's not going to take us long. So controllers, API, interactions. We're going to create a new class within here. And we shall call this one delete controller. Extend controller. The caps lock, of course it is. Invoke. That is going to accept the request. And it's going to accept a UID. Yeah, no, that's no problem, Craig. You go look after your newborn, buddy. I hope she's doing okay. So, ooh. Let's go have a look at Docker, see what's running in the background. Okay, so I've got another container that keeps starting, so I should be able to now spin that up and it should have no problems. Ooh. Always do that. And now we're good. So now if I run make test, we should be good. So when we want to delete a controller, what we'll do, we're going to write a test first because tests are very important. Delete, yeah, I call it delete. Yeah, it's been deleted. Never really gone for the destroy naming, especially on an API. I like it to match the verb where possible. Okay, so it can delete an interaction. So the first thing we want to do is we are going to get factory create, and then we are going to do a delete request. Simplify that one. And the UI we want to go for is API interactions delete. We're going to add on the interaction UID. Assert status code, and we expect that status to be HTTP accepted. That's all we really need. So around that we want to expect a couple of things. We want to expect that when we go interaction count, we expect this to equal 1 at that point, and then once we've deleted it should be 0. That's all we need to really do there, so let's just rerun that. We are going to fail because the API route is not defined yet, which is great. So we can now go and add that one. So we're going to add this just below down here. We're going to do a delete request do the delete controller, and we're going to call it delete. All pretty straightforward so far. So now if I run that again, we are failing now because we're getting a 401. It's because I have not logged in. Let me just log in quickly. And run that again. Annihilate control, I love it. Okay, we got 200 back, so we're hitting the right part. So at this point, we need to do an interaction. We need to go, okay, so let's do a query, and we want to find where the UUID is equal to the UUID that we are passing in, and we want that first or fail. We want this to fail, right? I mean, if it doesn't exist, we shouldn't be giving any false hope, right? So that is step one. Hasn't changed anything. We're still good. We're still getting that 200 response. So now what we need to do is interaction delete. I mean, we don't need any special action for delete, especially right now. It's just all very plain, straightforward. HTTP stuff. Right, so, and we say that we have accepted that request, and now we are good, so we can add that return response, and now when we run our test, we should be good to go, in theory, and we are good. However, what I want to also do is quickly analyze, make sure static analysis we're all good. Run all of our test suite, and then we can test for any sort of failures. So it gets a not found status, then interaction does not exist. So this is going to use the data helpers. So with UIDs, so first thing, obviously, we want to go do that, and then we want to say UID and not found. So now when we run the test again, we should be good. So I'll run a test helper here in the meantime. And we're good. So that is that part done. Obviously our tests are all passing, so let me just add that to Git and say deleting interactions. Nice and quick, nice and simple. So now we can start focusing it in on the event sourcing. So I believe it should already be installed. Let me just double check what I did. Contacts, yeah, we've got aggregates and stuff already. So phase one is when we want to store an interaction, is we need to run through that. So let's go and start building out some aggregates. So this will be the interaction aggregate. And it's going to extend the aggregate root. Now, someone did ask me why I wasn't going to use event source by Frank de Jonge, and if you haven't used it before, really cool package, but I don't know it well enough. That is a Laravel package, but I don't know it well enough to be able to stream and be happy to be showing people how to use it, because I've not used it enough. You can use it relatively simply. However, I'd want to make sure I had that full understanding before I started telling people how to use it. Otherwise, I'm just lying to you guys, and I don't want to do that. So here's our aggregate route. So we can do a public function. Interaction created, or sorry, create interaction. Create interaction. Right, so this is going to return self. So what this will do, it will say this. I want to record that a domain event happened. And that domain event is going to be called interaction was created, and we'll pass any arguments from here into here. And then we want to return this. So if we go back and look at contacts, let's make sure that we're going along the same route. We are looking good. So what do we want to store for that interaction? So if we go back to how we're doing it on a standard approach, we accept type, content, contact, and project. So do we want to go down the let's just pass everything through, or should we go down the passing in an interaction value object? Really, I mean that would make a lot more sense to me. We accept that object. This object can then be the object passed through. So now we just need to create this event, and that's kind of full circle. Our aggregate is kind of handled. So down in our domains, in the interactions, we can go create a new directory for events. Create a new PHP class called interaction was created, and this needs to should be stored. Here we go. So public function construct. So we will receive a interaction value object as an object, and that is all we need to do on this. It's really clean, really simple, nice lightweight sort of class. So now we can import that one, and we're good. That part is now good, so we can come back down to here. I just need to make sure that we register this. So let's expand this out a little bit so we can see it. Come all the way up to providers. Event sourcing service provider. There's our projector. I actually don't think we need to register much else. Let's just double check. Controllers. All looking good in there. Excellent. No, we're looking good. We are looking good. Hey, Nathan and Ben. Good to see you both. So, the aggregate doesn't need anything special happening to it. So, what do we want to do with this? We kind of need a handler, right? Just like we did before with our contacts. We have our handlers down here, where we have a contact handler. We need to add a new handler for our interactions. So handlers, we're going to create one called interaction handler. And what this needs to do, I'm pretty sure it extends Protectionist, I think. Let me go double check that one. A projector. extends the projector. Yeah, so what we can do, we'll go register that projector quickly while we are thinking about it. Event sourcing, we need to add another one. So this one is a interaction projector. Oh. There we go. That should now be handled. So what we need to do at this point is we need to say, okay, so public function on event name, which for us is interaction was created. We need to accept the event. Don't need to return anything from that one. And this is where we handle it. So if we go back to our controller, what we can quite easily do here is this. So handle, and the object that we actually want to handle is in fact the event object. That one there. I don't know why that isn't displaying. Interaction was created. Yeah, that should be finding it. Not sure why. So let's do a quick dump on the autoloader and see if we can kickstart things. Let's quickly run an update on that one. Make sure it's picking everything up the way it should be. That's going well, so let's go back down to our interaction handler. Domain interactions handlers, domain interactions handlers, interaction handler extends projector. See, that's fine there. So yeah, something's just not lining up there for some strange reason. Oh, wait a minute. That'll be why. Because I was using a mixture of different PHP versions. So now what we do is, if we just run our tests, nothing's changed. None of the new code's been tested, but nothing's changed. So we're good. So what we need to do, we need to write some tests before we change anything, right? So if we go to interactions, endpoint tests, come up to the top. So it can get a list. We're not bothered about that. It can create a new one. Okay, so that bit's going to have to go. And this bit isn't going to be important anymore. That's not going to be important anymore. So now we want to check that the eloquent stored event is 0. Then after we've ran this action, we're expecting it to be 1. So let's just run this one in place. Currently lots of failures, which is fine. So if we come back to that endpoint, what we can do instead I grab that, we can say interaction aggregate, retrieve. The UUID is going to be, for now, a random UUID. The string, which means we don't need that, and we don't need that. We want to say create interaction, and the object that we want to pass through is coming from that interaction factory right there. Which means that we don't want to return any resource. We want to return that, and realistically we want to say that this is now accepted because we've not actually created it at this point. So that means that on our endpoints test, we also want to say accepted. So now if we run it, we're still getting failures. Store controller 202 202. What's going on here? Wait, no, I'm doing the wrong one there. Here we go. I was clicking the wrong one. So, you can create a new interaction. There we go. Now we should be good to go again. No, we're still failing. Okay. Failed asserting that 0 matches the expected 1. Okie dokie dokie. We need to persist. There we go, now we're good. Now we're saving them. So those events are now stored. And in turn, after those events have been stored, the handler should be called, which allows our create interaction action to be handled, passing through the object, which will in turn save and create. So we can test this in isolation later. So that part works well. Let me just run that because that red mark is really starting to bug me. There we go. So our store controller is done. Nice and clean, nice and simple, doesn't take too much. Now, that's not bad. That does the job, right? So what we need to do next is, we know we can create a new interaction. We don't care about showing an interaction for this. That's not really a concern right now. And update. So what we also want to do quickly is, while we are in this mood, we want to come down to our tests and we want to do a handlers test. So we need to make sure that the interaction handler does in fact work. So let's say it can store a new interaction. Now I can't remember on the docs if there's a best way to do this style testing. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to build it up manually and see if there's anything that stands out. So we need the event. We'll create a new interaction was created. And the object, we're going to just add strings string. So endpoints, have I got any fake data? Yes. Create a new interaction. That is what I will use. So we want to go for a interaction factory, make attributes, drop those back. Here's our event, interaction meeting. Let's just solve these. Simplify that so it looks a bit nicer. So we've got our event. So what we want to do is we expect that when we go interaction count, we expect this currently to equal 0 because we've not saved anything to the database. So then when we go new interaction handler, on interaction was created, the event is going to be the event. Once that has completed, we are expecting this to now equal 1. And we're failing. And why are we failing? Class interaction type not found. That is fine. So I can import that one, import that one, run it again. Still failing. Undefined array key user. Okay, so user factory create gives me the UID please, or UID should I say. Simplify that one, run it again. Anything else we are missing? We are missing go, enum's catching me out again, and now we are good, we are passing. So now that we know that our handler is working, we don't have to worry about that anymore. So we can also go for, I don't really think we need to do much else because the aggregate's being tested by the endpoint and the action's been tested already here, and now the handler's been tested, so we're covered in isolation and we've covered in general. So now we can move on. Let's now move on to our update. So controllers, API, interactions, our update controller. So down here, let's close those off. So what we want to do is, in our endpoints test, can list interactions, can create a new interaction, can show one. There's that one. So I'm going to log in, that's fine. This bit, not super vital. No, we'll create it anyway. This bit we won't be able to do. But again, just like before, we've got an interaction, but what we really care about here is we're expecting that the eloquent stored event query count to equal 0. Then at the end, we expect this to have incremented. So we would have created a new stored event, and that should be it. So let's run that and wait for it to fail. Perfect. So now we can swap that for null, because we aren't actually performing the action within here. And instead, that could still fail. So what we need to do is we need to go interaction aggregate. We're going to retrieve based on the UID passed in. And this is where we want to say update an interaction, and the object is going to be this interaction factory value object, which we are creating. But also we need to pass in an extra thing in here. So we know what object it is, but we also need to say, okay, so when we get this, we also want to pass in that interaction for the UID. So now we can remove that. Don't really need to keep that in a temporary variable. We can clean up some of our statements up there that we're no longer needing. And now this should hopefully, it'll fail because method's not available. Yeah, update interaction is need creating. So if we come down to our domain interactions aggregates, we can say public function and the interaction in, and that interaction value object as an object, and again we will return self. So this records that the domain event that happened was new interaction was updated, and what we need to pass through again, interaction, there's the interaction, and then the object is the object. That's that part done. Let's just make sure we add those comments. Obviously this needs to be persisted. So now we can go back and create an event. Interaction was updated. Say OK, and this needs to extends should be stored. And we'll have a public function construct, and on here we will have a public string of interaction and a public interaction value object as object. So our event is pretty good in terms of storage. You can import that, and that all ties up. So now if I run this, we are good. So we're able to say that it can, wrong one again, keep doing that. Cursor keeps moving. So there we go. We know that it can update an interaction, which is perfect. Exactly what we wanted. So next step is to say, okay, so in terms of testing, we need the handler to actually handle this. So we need a public function on interaction was updated. Here's our event, void, and the action we actually want to call update interaction. We're going to pass through a model. We may have to refactor this, so we're going to say update the interaction and the object is the event object. So now we can come through to here. Interaction. So our model is going to be interaction query, where the UID is UID, first or fail. There we go. So then we can still update and refresh, and everything all still works exactly as we would have expected. So back on our tests down here for our handler, we can now do it can update an interaction. With strings. So we want something somewhat similar. So if we drop that in there, we need to say interaction was updated. There's the object. The interaction, which is the one we will need to create before, is going to be interaction factory create. Grab that UUID, then we can pass through the object, update it with the string. We expect there to okay, not that, we don't care about that part, we care about this part. So we expect, if we refresh, we expect the content to equal string. Now let's run it. So event must be interaction was created. There we go. Copy and paste errors, they always get you. There we go, interaction was updated. We know that the handler works, and we know that the endpoint works, and it will trigger the aggregate. So now we're just relying on the internal package to actually route things, which should be no problems at all. So now it can delete an interaction. So we need to work on an action for this, right? Hey there, thanks new subscriber, where are you from? Glad to have you with me. Hello from India. Welcome, welcome. So today we are doing some more refactoring to event sourcing from a CRUD system. So for anyone new joining us, we are building a CRM, very basic CRM, where we can store contacts and log interactions right now. And we start with CRUD, so we can do a very simple create, read, update, delete. And then we refactor the important aspects of CRUD into event sourcing so that we can start to get historical views, and we can later on report on past interactions and start to understand, okay, how many interactions has this person had over a certain amount of time, what's changed. You can start to understand a little bit more beyond just a basic query. Moldova, very nice. Everywhere that's a little bit nicer weather than where I am in Wales. It is very windy where I am today, actually. That's where my hair's gone, and the wind got me. So, okay, so we need an action, right? We need to scaffold out what this action might look like. So, create interaction, update interaction, and we're just going to create another new one, and we're going to call this a delete interaction. It's going to be pretty similar. So, what this will receive is, so we'll go public static function handle, and all we really want to do is pass this a UUID. Not going to have any return. It doesn't need to return anything at all. And we need to go, the model is an interaction query where the UUID is the passed in UUID, and we'll just do a first or fail. So this could potentially fail. And then we can just do a quick model, delete, and we are done. That's all we need to do. Best regards from Germany. Good old Germany. And Ollie. Hello, no-head PHP man. Yeah, so I typically don't do much front-end stuff, if I'm really honest. It's kind of not what I do. If I was to build this myself, I'd probably use Inertia in Vue most likely, personally. Outwork, we use React, but I prefer Vue myself, so I'd probably go that way. Sanctum, probably not needed. Breeze would be enough. Nice, clean, nice and simple. If you really wanted to be super simple with this, just add filament admin panel, and 10 minutes you'll be pretty much mostly done. That is kind of my advice on that one, if I'm really honest. So, but I've got my action. So if I pass one, it will delete it. So let's write a test for that, right? Okay, so it can delete an interaction. So one of the important things to do is testing. It's always important to test. Interaction, factory, create. So we've got one now. So at this point we expect that when we go interaction query count, we expect this to equal 0. We don't expect, we expect this to be 1. And then once we've finished the action, we're expecting this to be 0 again, because we expect to have deleted. Update. There we go. That should solve that issue. So now we just want to go delete interaction handle, where the UUID is the interaction UUID. That's all we want that to do. Something clean, simple, straightforward. doesn't need to do much. It's like the repository pattern, but it's encapsulated in one class. That all it does is it deletes that interaction in a standardized way. So that what you can do is, if you've got an API, if you've got a web front end or CLI or a console command, everything always happens in a predictable way, and there's your standard. You always call that action to do something that accepts common things, and it doesn't do much. It's relatively dumb in terms of logic. Reason it's in a feature test is because I need the framework booted. So there's my action tested for that one. I now know that that delete works. Update is not required. So I now know that I need to move on to how I delete my interactions. So this shouldn't work. It does work. Why does it work? Because I've not changed it. So that kind of explains it. So the eloquent stored event query should be 0. And by the end of it, eloquent stored event should be 1. So now if we run it, it will fail. Perfect. So in my delete controller, what I am expecting to do at this stage is, if we fail, we fail. No biggie. But on our interaction aggregate, we're going to get our UUID, and then we're going to say delete interaction and persist. So what we want to pass through is a interaction is UUID. So if we come to here, we can get rid of that because we no longer need it. We can come through to that, and we can add that new method. Click function, delete interaction, and we are going to accept a string interaction, and we're going to return ourselves back so we can chain this on. So we'll say that this record that the domain event of new interaction was deleted, and the interaction passed through was the interaction here. And just return this. So now I can grab this event here, come down to my events, create a new event called interaction was deleted, and this will extends should be stored. All we want to do is public function construct and say public string interaction, and that is it for that event. Really clean, really simple, doesn't need to do much. So now when I run this, we still fail. So we've got 500. Okay. There we go. Typo. As usual, it's the typos that get me. And now we're good. That can now be deleted, no problems. So deleting our interaction works. We have tested our interaction. We have tested our endpoint, and there's nothing to test on the handler. We don't need to perform anything. It doesn't need to react in any way. All it needs to do is do it. So actually, do we? No, we do. we do need to test something here. So that is my bad. Handlers. Public function on interaction was deleted. Interaction was deleted. Here's the event. It's not going to return anything, but we want to run the delete interaction handle where the UUID is the event interaction. That's all that needs to do. So now we can do something on the handler. So it can delete an interaction. So let's create an interaction. We can get its UUID. We can say that our event is a new interaction was deleted event. Simplify that one. The interaction is going to be interaction UUID, and then if we say on the new handler on interaction was deleted, the event was event, we expect that the interaction query count to equal 0. Before we run that, we expect that to be 1. So let's quickly run that and make sure it works. And we're good. So before we trigger our handler, we want to make sure that we've got 1 already in there because it's been created and it's not been stored yet, nothing's been kind of triggered, and then we expect it to be gone. Awesome. So where else can we go? Because I flew through that in under an hour. What else can we do? So there's one thing that I've spoken to a few people about before, and that is creating your own aggregates. Well, not your own aggregates, but the main problem that you get with event sourcing projects like this is that you've got one shared event store table and everything's going into there. What you can do, you can have an event store per aggregate route. So there's a way you can do that. It's not super well documented, but there's some advice around it. So what I will do, I'm going to create a new table or make a new migration. And we're going to call this create interaction aggregate stored events. Factor out pest. No, I love pest. Pest is amazing. So table, and then we're going to create interaction aggregate stored events. So create a table called interaction aggregate stored events. We'll start with that. We now have a new migration. Now I think we need a model, but we will come back to that. So just going to drop this in here, tidy this up a little bit, turn a new class. So we need not already big increments, that's fine. So there's an example that I've seen So I'm just going to pull this across. This is in a repo that isn't publicly available, so I'm just going to paste this in and walk through it. So we've got the aggregate UID, the aggregate version, the event version, event class, event properties, the metadata, the created at, event class, and aggregate UID. So if we just do like a file search for, I don't know, create stored events table. It's very much the same thing, but for a different table name. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Very, very similar, same thing. So what we need to do now is to create a basic model for this, but before I do that, I'm just going to run a migration to get that up there, and it's going to fail. So it's too long. Interaction events, stored events, aggregate. Wow. Interaction stored events. Maybe, because we don't need the aggregate really, do we? Okay, so it's too long. Okay, it's complaining about those uniques. If I add it there, is it going to complain? No, it doesn't complain if I do it there. Perfect. So there's that. So now I can come over to my models, create a new model, and we're going to call this interaction stored event. And this will extend the eloquent stored event. Beyond that, we just need the table definition, so we know what one to use. It won't be that, but it will be interaction stored events. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to refactor that table name quickly in here. Refactor, rename. Just drop aggregate from it. Refactor. Make fresh, make sure that all goes up okay. Perfect. So there's that. Create a new event store repository. So our next step is to come over to make an event store repository. So we want to come down to our domain, interactions. We'll add this in here. Repositories. And create a new file, and we're going to call this interaction stored events repository. I've not tested this yet, so bear with me. Okay. This extends the eloquent stored events repository. Protected string stored event model, and in our constructor public function construct we need to parent construct I also say that this stored event model is going to be stored event class. That should be most of it. Simplify that one. So that should all work, I believe. How do I get my aggregate to actually talk to it though? That's the main thing. Let me look at the documentation. On my aggregate, do I need to point it somewhere? Why I repeat interaction name in columns. Not sure what you mean there, unfortunately. Extends aggregate root, entities, handled events, retrieve, handle command, record that, set aggregate root version, persist, get stored event repository. So if I add this on here, I think this could absolutely bottom out completely and just kill everything. So we want to return a new stored event repository class. Let's see if this works to start with. This could cause some failures, and if it does, it might mean it's going in the right direction. If it does nothing, I might be going in the complete wrong direction, but we failed. Great. So why did we fail? Excellent. So now if I just refactor one of those tests, this one is failing. Run it on its own and swap out that for interaction stored event. Let's swap that around and rerun that test. We're good. That's now being stored in its own. So anytime we're looking at interactions, now we just need to say that we're using the interaction stored events instead of the eloquent stored events, which means that we've separated our event storage into its own aggregate store, making it nice, clean, and easy. So no longer need that, which is great. So now if I run my test suite again, see where else we're failing, and then I can go back and make another one for the contacts. So instead of having this massive repository of here's all of my stored events for the entire application, I can do it based on context for the domain, which is perfect for what I want to do. Endpoints test, that's perfect. So now what I can do is come to here and we're just going to create contacts one here. So if we say contacts or contact stored events. Contact stored event. That's all done, so we can do the exact same thing as we did here. Grab that, come into here, replace it. We're just going to quickly tidy that up because there aren't too many things that I need to do to this application, so going through and updating all the stubs isn't going to do too much for me, if I'm honest, for this particular project. So there's our contact stored events. I can migrate those. There's the migrations done. And now down in my models, I can create another new model. And we're going to call this a contact stored event. For some reason that's an interface. Contact stored event extends eloquent stored event. Refactored table is contact stored events. Nice and clean. Let's clean that one. There we go. That's all working nicely. So that up here, we can pretty much go copy that into there, and we'll just refactor this. Refactor, rename, contact stored events repository. Contact stored event. That part is good. So that now when we come down to our aggregate, much like we did down here, we can just grab this, pop it at the top, let's make sure nothing went too crazy there. So interactions are working fine. We're getting some failures on contacts, which is fine. Perfect. So let's go back through our tests now for contacts and handlers, and if needed in that. Nope, nothing should be in there. It should all be in endpoints. So where we are, see for 401, can create a new one. So this one should be a contact stored event. So we can now copy, paste. Drop that one in there, replace the eloquent one with a contact. So now if I just run make test, see how we're getting on. Still got a couple of failures, and let's see why. So if we have a quick look, target class, container, binary resolution. Ooh, okay, so we need to look at where we're making that, and that is going to be in the aggregate itself. So domain, contacts, working in there. Aggregate. Let's have a quick look at this. So that's complaining that the interactions repositories domain interaction repository contacts located in repositories. Aha, namespace was wonky for this. Just redump the autoloader, run our test suite, and that should hopefully all be fine. Okay, we've got a couple of failures coming back. Still getting a 500 error somewhere, so let's have a look at this. Seems to have not rebound within the Docker container, so we'll take it down, push it back up, and we'll just run a test again. That file should no longer be there. Might be a case of we've got to tap into the container to dump the autoloader here. Yeah, so we're just going to go make PHP, connect the container, composer, dump the autoloader. What I need to do actually, I think I need to update the composer Docker image from the PHP build. Let's go have a look at this. While that's going on, I'm going to have a look at this. Composer tags. I am currently pulling tag 213, and the latest one was 4 days ago, so we should be on 2.2. So let's just disconnect. Then Docker compose down. Going to rebuild the container, docker compose build. We'll say no cache, so we're going to rebuild from fresh. Don't worry about any images that we've previously pulled, and let's just pull out the latest of the greatest. Let's see what happens. Have a quick drink. So how's everyone doing? Are we all keeping up? Are we all understanding where we are? Any questions at this point? Anything that you want me to cover or go over again? I've been going now for an hour and 15 minutes. I want to make sure that I'm not kind of losing anyone along the way. So now is your chance. Please do shout out. Because after this, we haven't got much to do in terms of event sourcing. We can maybe add delete and a contact, but that's about it. It's not going to take longer than 10 minutes. But the main thing is, you know, when you get into your flow, when you get into this process of this is how I am building these applications, and when you get in that event sourcing mindset, it doesn't take any longer than CRUD. It might take a tiny bit longer, but hardly worth mentioning, right? It's super fast, super easy, straightforward. So that is building nicely on the final stages. of the PHP build where we're installing the PHP extensions. The next step is to pull from Composer and merge the images. We're just building our extensions, nice and easy. In the meantime, what shall we do? What shall we look at? What shall we be doing? Exporting layers, building, lots of stuff done. So Docker compose up -d. And we're all done. So let's make sure we're migrated. See, I've used Symfony before. I've never really been a fan. It never quite worked for me. It works for some people, but for me, it just never quite got there. Okay, so why is this causing an issue on this very specific one? We're getting a 500 error. Ooh, let's have a look. So we are, doesn't exist in the container. Interactions, okay, so that to me is saying that our aggregate for contacts is trying to pull something in that just doesn't exist here. Meet up the autoloader and rerun that test suite. One thing I have been looking at actually is a spiral framework. It sounds pretty cool. If you've not looked at it before, definitely suggest if you're kind of into playing with new frameworks, go and have a look at this. This is kind of pretty cool. 129 passed, perfect. Git add, git commit, and event source ahoy. So we go to documentation, getting started. It's relatively straightforward what you need. You don't need a lot. You can just create a project, configure it, run a server. So I suppose while I'm not too sure what to do, let's come back a level and let's just do compose a great project, spiral app, and we're going to call this one spiral test. So we'll spin that up. That is now all sorted from an event sourcing perspective. So configure. So we are getting exceptions thrown left and right. We are getting a lot of errors during inheritance of return type of. Oh, okay. Ooh. Maybe we won't do that. I mean, you can be, I don't know whether the gRPC one will work a little bit better. Let's test it. Just get rid of that spiral test. Spiral gRPC. Let's see what it does. Are you going to break on me? Yes, it's still going to break. It might be because I'm on PHP 8.1, to be fair. That could be one of the contributing factors here. Yeah. Definitely sounding like it, right? Okay, that's a shame, but that could have been fun to play with. It is pretty cool. Definitely something to look at. They built some cool stuff to play with. But there's not much else to play with right now. Everything's kind of gone quiet in terms of like open source world just before Christmas. So yeah, anything anybody wants to see? Anything at all? I've been working on my Laravel talk, which is coming along slowly but surely. Getting ready for my Laravel talk, which is pretty exciting. Got 15 tests. We're doing good so far. So the plan is to build up the application, build up all the tests, build up the integration, delete all the code, and just turn all the tests green. So I'll walk through this test suite quickly. So we've got things like, for each one, we're going to fake the GitHub service. And when we're calling the organization repos, we're going to pass back a fixture with a status code. If we're getting a specific repo, we're going to call back the owner repository fixture. So we know that we can build it. We know that we can create a pending request. We can resolve a GitHub service from the container. We can create a pending request from the resolved container. It can resolve as a singleton. So we can create one, resolve it again, and expect it to be the same thing. And we can fetch organization repos. So when we resolve, we can say get repositories for jump 24. And we expect the repositories to be a collection. Then for each repo, we expect the organization login to be jump 24. You can get a single repository. So we get the Laravel transporter one. And when we get it, we expect the name to be just Steve King, Laravel transporter. And all of that is coming from these JSON files right here, which is nice and clean, nice and simple. This is all just public data from the API, but yeah, that's what I'm working on for my talk. But if no one's got anything for event sourcing right now, I might call it a day early for a change. Maybe go watch some TV with the wife, go chill. Last chance to ask any questions, and then I shall leave you all to your evening and stop bugging you. Nothing. Just gonna quickly create a new delete controller for contacts. There's a public function, construct, not construct, invoke. We delete, we accept that request. And a string for the UID. Contact is a contact query where the UID is the UID, first or fail, contact delete, return new. JSON response where the data is null and the status is HTTP accepted. Clean and simple. Make analyze, all good. Generates code blocks. Add git commit. All sounding good. Perfect. So I'm just going to add this one route. Add call it a night, because I am very tired recently. There's my root, tests, feature tests, contacts, endpoints. It can delete a contact. Quickly log in. Then we're going to do a delete JSON. URI is API contacts delete. Set the status code of accepted. Expect that the that to equal 1 for now, and 0. So pass through run the tests, and we should be good. And now we failed. Haha. Contacts. Typos. Typos always get you. Always get you. And 130 passed, so git add, git commit. Just under an hour and a half. So we've got a couple of minutes, so let's just create that event. That was deleted. That's all looking good. That's all looking good, so we no longer need to add that temporary variable. So that now in our test, contacts, endpoint test, instead of running it this way, we expect that the contact event store contact stored event to have none, and then that to have 1. Do run that one, and we are good. That event is being stored. Lastly, we want an action. Click contact, public static function handle, and we're just going to pass through a contact as that there. We're not going to return anything. And we're going to do model equals contact query where the UID is contact first or fail model complete. There's that one, and then for the handlers, function on contact has deleted. Event void delete contact handle where the contact is the event contact straightforward on my test suite. My actions. It can delete a contact. And for that we want to say that the contact is contact factory create simplify that one. Quickly run that one. We're looking good. That has now been tested from an action perspective. And lastly, it can delete a contact. Handlers, there you go, contact, just drop that in there, so contact, deleted, drop all of that. There's our event. Don't need to worry about that. Yeah, hey Mohammed. Yeah, I need to look for a nice way to do that basically. So on contact was deleted event is that event. And now what we're expecting is expect contact query count to equal 0. So on that one, and we're good. Handler is handling, action is actioning, and endpoint is endpointing. So, yeah, so what you're saying there with the actions, for example, first or fail. So what this will do, it will throw a model not found exception. So we could catch that and throw something. You can test for that where you need to. But at this point, you've passed through levels of validation already, so it shouldn't ever fail. It's just a fail-safe. You're in your request validation, you're making sure that it exists. In your controller, you're then going, okay, first or fail. So you're catching out that HTTP layer. This is more precautionary, not really needed, if I'm completely honest. There's never a time I'm calling these actions where I don't already know that this is a contact UUID. It's just I don't want to pass a model. Why pass the entire model when I can pass a string? That's all it is. Yeah, it's a few extra queries, but for the sake of speed and efficiency, I'll just run another query when I need it. For those times, because these are happening typically in the background, so you don't want to serialize an entire eloquent model into an action and into a job that's running in the background to then unserialize it to then delete it. It just pass a UID and query it when it's going to be deleted. So first or fail is precautionary, not really needed. I can quite easily change that to first, and it's not going to make a difference. But yeah, there is that. I'm going to run that test suite one more time just to quadruple check, and then I'll be calling it a night. So get your questions in before I go, if you have any. We're good. So I can git push, get that all up there, and that is done. Exit that. Don't need that. And we are good. So I'm just going to close all of that down. Good night, Docker. And I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. I'm not sure if I'm going to be streaming on Thursday. I'll see how the rest of the week goes. I might try and get a little bit of rest because I'm starting to feel a bit of burnout. So I might take a little bit of time off for streaming because I've got new house move, babies, work, lots to juggle and the Laracon talk to plan. So keep watch on Discord and Twitter. I will keep you updated if I'm going to be streaming. The Back to Basics series, that is still in planning, heavily in planning. I hope to know more over the Christmas period. I'm hoping to put some more thoughts into that one to start to flesh it out. It's a different type of stream. So instead of my typical stream where I turn up with a rough idea and just see where it takes me, Back to Basics with PHP is something that I need to take people more on a journey. So I need to make sure that the journey makes sense, make sure that the content is relevant and useful for people as I go through. But it is being worked on, and it will be hopefully announced sooner rather than later. But any questions, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or link in the description below. There's Discord links. Feel free to join the server, ask me questions. I announce most of my streams on there anyway. Other than that, please let me know if you like the stream or not. Drop a comment, subscribe if you want to keep up to date with any of the new stuff that's coming out. I've got a few other streams planned that are in the works. And I might see about doing a more kind of private Laracon dry run at some point to see how it goes before the event. So I might run my talk at some point and just get some feedback from a few people. It probably won't be a public link, it'll probably be a private link, so make sure you're in the Discord or you're subscribed, and I'll see what I can get done. Be nice to get some early feedback before I plan too much of that talk. But I am going to go spend some time with my wife now. Have a lovely evening, everyone, and I can't wait to see you next time. Thank you very much. Good night.